Hi, I'm Peoria Mayor Kathy Carlett. Thanks for joining me for another edition of Peoria Pulse. On the tail of a particularly consuming presidential election, I want to point out that the level of government that most affects you is much closer to home than Washington, D.C. Local government touches your life each and every day, and while it may appear seamless, the top-notch quality of life enjoyed by Peoria residents is no accident. It's critical that our residents of our great city know exactly who their government is, what their government does and what their government does not do, and how the city of Peoria serves them every single day. Today, I'm joined by Peoria City Manager, Mr. Carl Swenson. Carl, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. I know that you have been in local government for over 35 years and our city manager for more than 9 of those years. So we're very pleased to have your wealth of knowledge here on the show today. Can you please give me an idea about how local government serves its citizens and why it's so important?
I'd be happy to, yeah, and it's a pleasure to be the city manager here, an honor really. It's a great city, and the relationship that the staff have working with you and the council is outstanding. And that's really where service delivery begins. And we are, as you mentioned, the place that really touches the lives of citizens every day. As residents and citizens turn on their water tap or drive anywhere in the city on roads and streets, go to parks, libraries, any of the services that touch the quality of life, that's the city, that's us, and that's what we do.
Yeah, it's a big, big job and
a
really important one. But our city is 178 square miles, and with 171,000 people, we are really only halfway built out. So what would you say is the biggest challenge that we have in the city of Peoria?
Well, the biggest challenge by far is growth. Obviously housing and construction is the biggest industry in Arizona, and it's the bread and butter of Peoria. It's a growing community, it's a wonderful quality of life in a residential community, but keeping that quality of life and keeping taxes low is a challenge as we manage growth. I think in talking with citizens, and I know you do often, people sometimes don't understand what the role and power of a municipal government is when addressing growth pressures. And we have very limited tools in our toolbox to use to manage the costs of growth. As we look at the pace of growth now, picking up again after the recession, we're issuing over 100 single-family building permits, single-family home building permits every month. And so the city is back on pace to grow very rapidly as the area emerges from the last recession.
That's huge. 100 new building permits every single month. And I know the City Council just approved a large development like Pleasant Heights, which is 6,000 new homes getting ready to be built. It's
true, and that is north of Vistancia. So as residents are familiar with the current northern limits, Vistancia, which is a lovely development. This new development that you mentioned is north of that. And we go all the way up, as you well know, but maybe some of the viewers don't, to Lake Pleasant and then beyond to the west. And a lot of that open territory will eventually be residential and some commercial development.
And so, with the growth going so far north, how do we pay for and how do we manage all of the infrastructure that's necessary for those new residents? How do they have water and sewer and all the things that we do so well?
The city of Peoria does an excellent job in planning. So we have been focusing on bringing water, roads, public facilities to the northern part of the city for some time. Our plans are solid. What has occurred in the last few years, however, is the state legislature has taken a bite out of the finances that we need to be able to fund that growth. The mantra of growth paying for growth has been a feature of municipal life or governmental life in Arizona for many years. And cities such as Scottsdale, Phoenix, Glendale built out by having a system where impact fees would cover those costs. And those were basically the way that cities took the impact of the development in receipts basically from the homes being built, and then could use that money back to purchase the facilities needed to serve the areas. That's been changed, and we now no longer have the ability to charge impact fees for all of those services.
That is a shame in my viewpoint. We are an emerging city and we need to have those impact fees in order to make growth pay for itself. I mean, it's such a common sense principle, and I'm very sorry to see that it has been diminished quite a bit in the last few legislative sessions. But having said that, what are we going to do to pay for growth? And maybe we can back up a little bit and talk about how the city receives its revenues. It's not from each home that is built. You don't get enough revenues to pay for that growth, do you?
No, and in fact, residential communities don't pay for or cover the cost to serve them. So our revenue primarily comes from sales tax, not from property tax, which is a feature of the Arizona tax structure. So what we need to do is maintain a level of sales tax revenue that allows us to turn that money back into services for our citizens.
So it's the good news and the bad news, really.
Right.
You know, sales tax is something that can be equally divided among all of our citizens, as well as having people who are visitors to our city pay the sales tax that helps us to pay for our infrastructure. At the same time, if we don't have enough sales tax revenues, we cannot pay for all of the growth that we have. The system works really well if your city is already built out.
That's right.
But for a city that is in the growth curve, a high end of our growth curve, we really need to have more revenues in order to deal with the kind of growth that we have coming up. So, having said that, tell me a little bit about our budgeting process.
Well, we work very closely, as you well know, with the mayor and council. So you set the policy goals for the city, and we translate those policy goals into the actions of the organization and the administration. The way that is operationalized is through the city budget. And each year we put together a balanced budget that I recommend to the city council that meets those needs. So we balance our revenue against the service delivery demands of a growing city.
And always the priorities of the city council, as well as city staff, city management, is going to be police and fire, safety first, always, and then the necessary infrastructure so that our citizens can depend on the water quality that they receive, and the fact that when they turn on that tap, they're going to get all the water that they need in their home. So when you talked about planning, at the original part of our conversation here, I was really intrigued by that, because if we don't plan for all of the future growth, everything's going to be a surprise to us, isn't it? And we certainly don't want that to happen. So if you would talk a little bit about how we have long-range plans in the city of Peoria, I would appreciate that.
Certainly. We have, first and foremost, the general plan. And that's the overarching plan for the entire city. And in fact, we're in the process of updating that general plan right now, and there'll be citizen involvement opportunities for folks to participate as we update the general plan in the next few years. But beneath that, we have plans for each of the specific service delivery areas. So we have good plans for public safety, we have good plans for the utilities, water, wastewater, solid waste, and those plans are funded through our budgeting process each year.
Yes, so the city of Peoria is not going to be caught off guard at any time in our growth.
That's right.
One more thing I'd like to discuss and touch on is our relationship with the school districts.
Sure.
We have a number of school districts in our city, and a lot of times people feel like with every new home that is developed, we should decide whether we're going to allow that home based on the situation in the schools. Well, that is very, very important to us. Please talk a little bit about the legalities of that.
Sure, and it's a great question. It's complicated. The school districts are a separate unit of government, an elected school board, their own budget, but obviously the health of a community, particularly a suburban community such as Peoria, is dependent on the relationship between the city and the school district. And we take that relationship to heart. And I know you, Mayor, meet regularly with the elected levels of the school district, the school board, I meet regularly with the Peoria Unified School District Executive Director, and we have a great working relationship. Now that said, they still have their own budgeting process, their own system, but we can't. So the second part of your question is what power do we have over approving basically any development, and we can't stop development. As development occurs, we can only support that development and support the school district in being able to build the facilities they need to serve the future families that will be coming into our city. And so I think citizens should stay active and involved with that and support the school district as they seek in this limited government construct that we have in Arizona to be able to find the funds that they need to build the schools and pay the teachers that are so important in a community like ours.
It is absolutely critical, and we don't disagree with our citizens when they say, wait a minute, we need to put the brakes on here so that our schools can get caught up. But it is truly the obligation of the state of Arizona to fund the schools, and it is our obligation to manage land planning. And going back to all of the things that you said about all of the plans that we do have in place, and the amount of ability that we have to stop or curb growth being just so minimal, there's a tough balance right there.
It's true, and one of the key features of life in the United States and importantly in Arizona are property rights.
Right.
And that's a sacred right. And I think sometimes citizens misunderstand our ability to affect growth on private property. Private property owners have very well-defined rights, and we cannot stop them from developing. We can't stop the city from growing, and we don't want to, but we would at times like to be able to affect the pace of growth, and that can be challenging because our ability to do that is, in many cases, defined by the state legislature. Right. And that's another complicated relationship that cities have in working with that level of government to support us in doing what we need to do to manage growth.
You're absolutely right. And we do have a lot of complexities around us, including the relationships above us and below us and beside us. But, it's important for our citizens, I think, to understand that we put as many plans in place as we can to affect the long-term growth of our city so that it stays in a nice, neat, organized manner, and that we don't have surprises as we grow and we're not caught off guard with any of our needs.
Absolutely.
So, with that, I want to thank you so much for being here today and for sharing some of your knowledge, your vast knowledge with us.
Thank you.
The role of local government is extremely important and directly impacts residents every single day. It is your local government who ensures that our community has adequate police and fire, that we have well-maintained streets and water systems, and that we have quality libraries and parks. Peoria continues to be a top-ranked city because of our exceptional quality of life. It's embodied in our safe neighborhoods, beautiful parks, and pristine open spaces. Although outside pressures will always need to be considered, with focused leadership and thoughtful planning, we remain targeted on maintaining these key attributes that make Peoria so special. As you can see, the role of local government is far-reaching and meaningful. Over the next several months, I'll be sharing more information about what the City of Peoria does and how we work every single day to bring value to residents through a program called City Sense. I hope you'll tune in again to hear more about the City of Peoria and meet some of the people helping to make our community an even better place to live. You can find all of the episodes online or every weekday at 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. here on Channel 11. Thank you for joining me today for a City Sense edition of Peoria Pulse.